You see how they get knocked out in those fights.
Malaka, like that one, who was fucking fighting? The one that got... I was watching it with Rick and Jake.
Yeah.
Max Holloway.
Yeah,
He won the baddest motherfucker. Or he knocked that baddest motherfucker.
Yeah.
Bro.
Crazy. They were belting each other for 5 rounds of those things.
They were going nuts, man. That was that was sick, man.
Both two of the most durable fighters on the planet. Gaethje and Holloway. Crazy.
That's what attracts so many people to that shit, man. Like the sheer ability for the fight to just go from 0 to hero. Whereas boxing doesn't have that as often.
Yeah, yeah.
If you watch it as a non-fighting fan, you can almost be like, these guys are pussies.
Yeah,
this is boring as.
Because a lot of high shell sort of guard and there's different tactics to push through if you're getting wailed on. But yeah, I mean, it's a good high-level boxing fight. It's only entertaining when it's like a two Mexican style boxing fighters, like they're just
whatever
throwing hands. But then you got one guy who's like real on the back foot, technical, evasive, rather than just like in each other's face. Yeah, it's a bit less entertaining. Yeah,
I love the different fucking styles, man.
Styles make fights.
And like talking about like my fight, fucking, I can't wait to watch the tape because it's gonna be uploaded on YouTube.
Yeah,
probably this week. They filmed the whole night.
Yeah.
The amount of volume I throw is so fucking little that it pisses me off.
Yeah, yeah.
I know I've got way more.
Yeah.
Like I remember at the end of the first and second round, I knew I had so much more to give.
Yeah, yeah.
I was like, man, I'm not even fucked.
Yeah.
Like I'm breathing, don't get me wrong, but
push it harder. Yeah.
I've trained way harder in any other, like I said on the Monday. I'm more fucked at the top of the hills after the first run than I was at any stage of the fight.
Yeah.
And that included like moments where I, panicked and I had nerves and all that sort of shit. So it was very interesting, but because of my inexperience fighting, I just, I guess, froze up in those moments and I was throwing no more than like 3 punch combos.
Yeah.
And I found that a mistake that I was making that Kara pulled me up on after round 1 and 2. He goes, man, you're not going to hit him. You may not hit him for the first 2 or 3 punches.
Yeah.
But you can't just stop swinging at that point. You just got to keep rifling through. And sometimes it does that with the pads. It'll be like 1, 2, and then he'll purposely miss the hook.
Yeah.
And then I've got to do the cross after. And as soon as I miss that hook, my brain just stops.
Yeah. Yeah.
And he hasn't told me he's gonna make me miss it. My brain just initially thinks I haven't connected.
Yeah.
I need to stop. And I brought that into the fight.
Yeah.
So many fucking times.
Yeah.
Like if I went 1, 2 and he just backstepped.
Yeah, you stop.
That'd be the end of it.
Yeah, but that's pressure in itself. So you just got to follow up. Keep
Yeah.
going.
And because of that, I lost the ability to, I guess, suffocate him with pressure.
Yeah. Yeah.
And because I wasn't doing that, I didn't really exert myself to my full potential.
Yeah.
So by the end of the rounds, I was like, I'm tired, but I'm looking over and he's fucked as well.
Yeah.
Which gave me a lot of confidence. Ultimately ended up with a knockout, which was...
You found the shot. You found it in the end. Unbelievable.
And it was fucked, man, because we were actually practicing that behind backstage.
Yeah. Yeah.
He was like, you got to do this, you got to do this. You got to throw, you got to turn it over, you got to turn it over.
Money.
He told me after round 2, you got to turn it over, and that was it.
I saw Kara's reaction afterwards. He fucking...
Malaka.
He's like, I fucking told you so.
Yeah. It was a massive moment, man. The whole fucking night, like the experience behind it. Like, initially I thought the fighting was just so individual sport, which it is to a certain degree. At the end of the day, you're in that ring, and although you are getting instructions, it's up to you to fucking figure it all out.
Yeah.
But after at the back, all the boy there's...
The team in the end, yeah.
Bro, it's a full team, bro. There's like 20 cunts there. Everyone's like loving each other.
Yeah.
It's just part of the gym, which is mad.
Imagine doing it without them there. It'd be a whole different thing.
Unbelievable, man.
Yeah. What an experience, bro.
Bro,
Fuck yeah.
The whole thing was fucking crazy, man.
It's awesome. Yeah, what a way to have your debut.
And that too, man.
Yeah.
And Chip as well, man. Fuck, he
Yeah.
fought a fucking very good fight, man. He won fight of the night.
Yeah. I saw the volume he was throwing. Like, he was doing what you were saying you felt like you should have done. He looked like he just put it all out there, like, go, volume. Like, even on the back foot, just...
Everything that... Like, the guys afterwards were like, fuck, that actually looked like a proper fight.
Yeah.
Like, you know, obviously it voted fight of the night for a reason after that. And, you know, well deservedly, it was the main event of the night.
Yeah.
But yeah, it just didn't look out of place.
Yeah.
It seemed like he knew what he was doing, in control. He just kind of like brick by brick took him out.
Yeah.
And by the third round, he took a knee, put him on the ground,
Yeah.
and
Nice body shot, yeah.
that was it. So by the end of it, it was just like, there's no doubt Chipper's won this.
Oh, yeah.
I think the first one was close. I'd say it was in Chipper's favour. Second one he won, and the third one he got the points because he dropped him, and that was it, man.
Yeah.
But yeah, fucking...
Broke him down, man. Yeah.
Very, very good. And, you know, us reflecting on that, like what we spoke about last time, man. Fucking how you started in November 22.
Yeah.
We did the exact same.
Yeah.
And I was reflecting on Chip, like how far we've come.
Yeah.
Fucked.
It's crazy how much you can do in like little 6-month blocks if you just put the work in.
Yeah.
It's crazy.
Yeah.
Like, your whole life can change. Like I'm of the opinion that if you haven't reinvented yourself in some way every 6 months in any capacity, like you haven't done much with your time.
Absolutely, man. Absolutely. So currently, where are you at now, man? I think we're just flying well with this, man. Let's just go with this. So where are you currently now with your training? And let's just pull back 6 months ago. Where were you 6 months ago? Let's go December.
Yeah.
Like, what was your outlook in training with currently what you're doing? And have you achieved what you wanted? And did you expect to be where you're at, if not more?
Yeah. I mean, 6 months ago, let's say it's December we're talking here, I was 0-2. I'd lost my first 2 amateur Muay Thai fights. And my headspace and my goal was, you know, it was a little bit ego driven. It was, let's get these wins back. I need to, like, I can't, like, be 0-2. That was the ego side of things. But it was, I was in a very dedicated period of my training. I still am. My training's still very much the same. Now, fast forward now, I'm 3-2, 3-5 win streak. I fought in February, March, and April, back to back. Got the wins, and just developed better and better each fight. But that all stemmed from losing in August last year, losing in October last year, getting sick, continuing to find a way to train, having an agile system to rely on in terms of my S&C and my adaptability to train around niggles and injuries and stuff. All of that has resulted in me being 3-2 now, coming back from that losing streak, and yeah, we push forward from here. Now I'm just prepping for the next fight. It's a continuous journey. I like to think of it as a forever fight camp. I don't like to dedicate it a certain period to fight camp style training. I prefer to just figure out a way to uphold good quality training year round. Because then you don't have a definitive start and finish point. It's more how much volume can you provide yourself or put yourself through over time. Because in the end, you keep yourself in the game for longer, more consistently, you're going to get better.
Yeah. So what's the commonality with Muay Thai? Maybe it's the same for boxing, but like you've done 5 fights in say an 8-month period.
Yeah, give or take, yeah.
Like how frequently can you be doing fights is the question I'm asking.
Yeah. Well, Muay Thai, the culture is like you want to be active. I think as an amateur in both boxing and Muay Thai, you can fight pretty much. Look, if everything goes well, you can fight every 2 weeks if you wanted to. Some people in Thailand will fight every week, but that'll come with experience. It'll come with mentality. It'll come with each given fight. How much damage do you take? But yeah, you can be as active as you want to be. It just depends on what your goals are, I guess.
Yeah. So I like that conditioning all year round because, I mean, you're always going to be like I'm even looking at this morning. Like I was training in the class and I was like, I'm in a different element.
Yeah.
I've had the fight. Although I'm training hard, there's just a different mentality.
Yeah.
Not that I was lazier by any means, but there was just different. I mean, probably my Apple was, if you wanted to record, it was probably a bit less. But it was just a completely different mindset. But continuing to train to technically be somewhat fight ready all year round.
Yeah.
In case, I guess that's being the ultimate fighter. And you're not just fighting for the game, you're actually taking it like it's your fucking life.
Yeah.
As if I could potentially go to war tomorrow.
Yeah, 100%.
Am I ready or not?
Yeah.
And that's obviously a philosophy that you instill.
Yeah.
So, you know, whether you're in camp or not, I'm assuming it's quite rigorous.
Yeah, for sure. I've got a minimum requirement. I like to think of my training as, depending on the modality, you know, if we break it down into sport-specific training, strength and conditioning in the gym, extra conditioning work, and everything else in between, there's ranges. So sport-specific might be 4 to 6 times a week. That's the bulk of the training. S&C might be 1 to 2 times a week. Extra air dye stuff might be 1 or 2 times a week. When I'm closer to a fight, I may ramp those up and to my maximum recoverable doses.
Yeah.
So it'd be at the higher end of the range. If I'm a bit further out and a fight just happened, say we're in your context, you just come off a big win, a bit more relaxed, there's no big mounting pressure on you. If I was in the same situation as you, I'd knock it down to 3 to 4 Muay Thai sessions, you know, 1 to 2 gym sessions on the lower end of the range. Just so, again, we've got to be realistic. You can still push your training hard there, but it's not an on and off switch. It's more, I like to think about everything in training and nutrition. I like to think about it as being more on a dial rather than being on and off switch.
Yeah.
If it's on and off switch, you kind of end up adopting an all or nothing mentality. Mm-hmm. Very harmful way to go about training and nutrition in any regard. Training specifically, yeah, the dial just turns down a bit.
Yeah, I like that. That's the same kind of mentality I have. Like when people tell me they're on a diet, that just doesn't sit well with me, that terminology, because I immediately think, well, if you're on one, you can be off one.
Yeah.
So why don't we just change that thought process and just make a healthier food choices in general?
Yeah.
Because there's a better chance that you're going to have that over a longer period of time than being like, I'm on a diet for 2 months for summer.
Yeah.
Or I'm doing a specific diet, I don't know, some carnivore or keto or Atkins or whatever the fuck else people do out there.
Yeah.
Although they can help periodically, in the grand scheme of things, and the way I've at least seen people go about their lives, those are people that kind of stick to that, say you're doing a keto diet. I find they never do it properly, or they're never doing carnivore properly. They'll just go, almost looks like a little fashion trend.
Yeah.
And then I look at like the bigger picture, and the results are never as pronounced over a long period of time sustainably as someone that just has a dial.
Yeah.
That's not always full, it's not always off, it's always just continuously running.
100%.
And if I think you're obviously applying that with, sure you do that with your food too.
100%.
Because it allows you that flexibility.
Yep.
Like if you have an event this weekend, you know, well, doesn't matter, Monday to Friday, I've ticked all the boxes.
Yeah.
Don't worry, man, I've got a birthday, I have a bit of cake. It's not going to do anything. Whereas that can really kick people off the horse.
Yeah.
You find that with your clients at all?
100%. I mean, you're always going to fall to the level of your systems, right? You're not going to, if you have a very rigid approach, which can work, you know, everything does work. It just depends on context. And people got to remember that the devil is in the dose, right? How long are you doing this approach for? What's your intention? For person A who's obese, they haven't trained much in their life, they have no tracking and diet experience, they may be better off going through a bit more of a rigorous phase of dieting where they learn those systems and fast track their way to, I guess, flexible, agile dieting and getting in and out of a fat loss phase a bit quicker. They might find more benefit from that, and then that way you can, get rid of the elephant in the room, which is just the higher body fat percentage. Person B, who's leaner, more experienced, an athlete growing up, knows the ins and outs of nutrition, a lot more coaching experience, they can afford to be a bit looser around their nutrition, outlook, and they can go out a bit more frequently. They can switch off a little bit more, turn the dial down a bit more often, because they've essentially earned. I don't like the terminology earning. When it comes to nutrition, saying you want to earn something is a little bit harmful. But in their context, they've put in the long-term effort to then earn their outing and not have to worry about it.
Yeah.
But it might be better off a person A to just suck it up for a bit, make more sacrifice. But again, we have to meet them with sympathy. Person A might not respond well to that approach. As a coach, My job is to maybe try that approach, figure out what they respond to, meet them where they're at, and then strip it back completely. Some clients need to really start from something as simple as just trying to get a little bit more protein in. And it cascades from there. They eat a little bit more protein, they're a bit fuller, they snack a little bit less. It gives them the confidence to show that they don't have a snacking issue. They just haven't addressed the fundamentals, and it all trickles down. Eventually, long term, that little change can give them the confidence they need to then maybe start eating more vegetables, maybe sleep a little bit better, maybe train more often, maybe distract themselves a little bit less around the household environment, which is often the breeder of overindulging and snacking. It's boredom, it's not keeping busy, it's not being full satiated from prior meals. All these things trickle down and they end up becoming person B long term just from one change a few years back. So,
yeah, it's an interesting point, especially distractions. You've been fucking. Good question for you, man. Like, how do you keep yourself like focused on what you want to do, as well as managing, obviously, coaching other people as well? Because you're looking at making it professionally as a Muay Thai fighter.
Yeah.
And distracted by phones, distracted by life, fucking anything, man. Like, how do you keep focused? And what's the take-home message for a few people that are looking to, I guess, in that realm of training? Yeah. What do you use for yourself to keep yourself sharp, man?
Yeah, I like to keep everything running in parallel with each other. I'm coaching. It's in a sense, it's a business venture. My training, I'm trying to go professional because I know if I can run both of these things parallel by each other's side, they're both going to complement each other, and I can apply the same mindset to both of them. Just sacrificing, dedicating a lot more time to them both. But I think the most important thing here when it comes to eliminating distractions is filling your calendar up. The idle mind is the devil's playground. It always will be. As soon as you've got a gap in your calendar, we're only human. The devil will come in. Here's a distraction. We live in an obesogenic society. We live in a distractogenic society. There's all the entertainment you ever wanted right at your fingertips. We have the Library of Alexandria in our hands, connected to our iPhone 12s to 16s. We have all the information we ever wanted right in our hand as an extension of our brain. No shit, the context, our environment is conducive of distraction. So if you look at your Google Calendar or your Apple Calendar, whatever you use, if there are gaps in there, fill them up with something. If you've got your training and your work schedule in there, what can you do in that extra time? Like, is there realistically, is there meal prep you could be doing? Is there something you could be reading? Is there a park you could visit to go take a walk at, to listen to a podcast? Anything. Better off doing that to help your other periods of work be a lot more productive than keep it blank and do nothing. Because that's where blokes, some people that might stumble upon this podcast or these clips, a lot of the time, the things that hold men back specifically as well, things like pornography, men and women as well, obesogenic, not food or higher calorie, more indulgent, salty, palatable food. If it's available in the house, they're going to go for it when they're bored. Our body just tries to fill up that empty gap in our calendar with some easy, quick dopamine. So what are the first options? Easy, quick, shit food. If it's there, a resistance provider there or something that can stop that habit is placing resistance on it. If it's not in the house already, you're out of the burning house. A lot of people's houses are burning. There's the environment in their house is there's chocolate popcorn in the fucking pantry. Like there's whatever else. The environment is just not set up for you to succeed, and that's where you can start. But again, if I bring it back to anything, the idle mind, devil's playground. Fill your schedule up with as much as you can. See what you can tolerate. Yeah. Because let's say you do burn out, you can always see what your limit is and pull back from there.
That's true. And I mean, man, I even fall victim to it, man.
100%. We're only human.
If we've got, say, some chocolate or some, I don't know, it's after an event, Easter, Christmas, people just give chocolates and shit like that. I even fall victim to eating it, man.
100%.
And I hold myself as a pretty strict, regimented type of person. 99% of the other time, I've got mates that will come over and open up the pantry to have a look into something, and I go, bro, there's nothing in there, mate. There's just bland old shit, and it's a running joke. Anyone that comes in, just don't have anything. I even grow up like that too.
Yeah.
Unless we go to Yambapu's house and then a whole different story. But let's flip back to training, bro, and you as a fighter, because you're obviously coaching fighters too.
Yeah.
So obviously whatever you're implementing within your training and the experiences that you're gaining through mentality, through strength, you're assisting others to mentally prepare and physically prepare for them. What are some of the biggest challenges that you're seeing that people trying to get into the fight game or are into the fight game now that they're facing?
Probably the onset of acute injuries and struggling to manage their sport practice with lifting, and overcomplicating things. You know, some people might come from a powerlifting, bodybuilding background if they're transitioning to combat sport. Is becoming very popular these days. So people are coming from all sorts of sporting backgrounds and approaching me wanting to, you know, enhance their Muay Thai, their Jiu-Jitsu skill development and their fitness. But across a broad problem I see is not prioritizing the sport practice and you know, making that the priority. Figuring out what your priority is going to be the cornerstone for everything else. The base of the pyramid is making sure the sport is of utmost importance, because that's where most of your conditioning is going to occur anyway. Right? After that, you can start to refine things. You know, you've got a regimented schedule there, and you know, you have 4 to 5 sport practice sessions a week. If it's Muay Thai, then you can work backwards from there and see what gaps you can fill. And then you can get a bit more individual. Does this athlete need, you know, are they a shitter mover? May they need to just spend more time on the mats or in the gym working on their skill? And could the conditioning I provide them just be based on more strength-related stuff, maybe giving them a bit more movement variability, working on their speed and power, rather than like slamming them with extra airdyne conditioning and hill sprints and whatever else. But there might be another athlete who, you know, that first person might be a shitter mover. The second person might be a better mover. They take on the skill very well. It might be a year or two in, a couple amateur fights. They know, you know, I can tolerate 5 to 6 days of training a week in jiu-jitsu, Muay Thai, whatever it may be. Then I can chime in and go, okay, let's ramp it up on the conditioning side of things. Might be more ideal for you to start doing 1 or 2 extra airdyne sessions, or some repeated sprinting, some more bounding, rather than keeping, you know, just strength in the picture.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's very individual. But yeah, the broad problem I see is not figuring out what their priority is.
Yeah, so I agree with you. I mean, the skill and practicing the sport is of utmost importance because, I mean, that's what you're doing, yeah?
100%.
And my coach actually he mentioned this thing, and I know a lot of people harp on about, like, and of course, I mean, it's what I teach and you teach. Strength definitely plays a huge factor in becoming a more powerful athlete in general. But at the same time, his quote was, precision is power. You don't actually need to be that powerful if you're as precise as you can be.
Yeah.
And I never quite understood that until the weekend.
Yeah.
Because I said to Kara this morning, I go, bro, I actually didn't even hit him that hard.
Yeah.
Like, I didn't even follow through.
Yeah.
He goes, yeah, but it was so precise that it doesn't matter.
Exactly, yeah.
And you can only get that by practicing the sport. So, like, I mean, correct me if I'm wrong, say the sport's 100%. I would say the sport is at about 70 to 80, depending on what level you're at.
100%.
And then that last 20% can be filled in with, like, strength, diet, all the extra external sort of stuff.
Yeah.
But if you can't swing to strike a ball or throw the punch in the right manner, I don't give how much bench press or shoulder press or fucking rotational and explosive punches and pushes you do.
100%.
If you can't do that properly with it, where does that lie in that?
100%. You take an endurance athlete, or like high rocks is the thing that a lot of people are doing now. I guess it's like some sort of derivative of CrossFit. You're working concurrent qualities.
What is that?
It's like
I've heard of
they're
that.
events. They're like multiple. It's like a CrossFit event.
Yeah.
So CrossFit athletes they're fucking. I commend them for their ability.
Fuck, bro. They're machines.
Bro, Olympic lifting derivatives, sled pulls, sprinting with time trials. I think high rocks is more like I have like endurance-based stuff in there as well.
Yeah.
They're good at everything, but you know they don't have the software downloaded. If you're going to chuck them in the ring, theoretically they could land with enough power to knock you out, but they've got to practice the sport.
Yeah.
It's a very obvious thing. People forget it. Like, I know plenty of people that are obsessed with improving their 5K time. I want to get my 5K under this amount. And they're boxers or they're grapplers. It's like, cool, but most of your conditioning, if you're a jiu-jitsu guy, you should just do more stand-up in the gym, more wrestling practice. If you're a Muay Thai fighter, spend more time clinching. Like, if those boxes are ticked and you want to enhance your 5K time, you got one life. Go for it. Maybe get a coach to help you optimize that process. I personally like going for 5K runs hard throughout my camps. It's one of my dedicated sessions. Is it optimal? No, but I find it fun. Some people don't, so they don't have to do it. Whatever has the most buy-in from the athlete is more important. But yeah, for sure, it's precision is definitely like your coach said, it's the most important thing. And on that note as well, there's nothing directly like tangible from strength and conditioning into combat sports performance, right? You're just hoping to improve the underlying physical qualities of that given athlete and then hope they can manifest themselves into that athlete when they compete and when they train, help them become more resilient. But then, you can't attribute them, a Muay Thai fighter head kicking a guy to the fact that he's doing a curtsy landmine squat at 20 kilos heavier than he used to fucking 4 months ago. A sprinter, they might shave half a second off their 100-meter sprint, and that might have run in congruence or in the same point of time when they started doing Olympic lifts and certain plyometrics and certain conditioning with their coach, strength and conditioning with their coach. You can say, okay, he shaved half a second off. He hadn't progressed for 4 years. Now all of a sudden he's improved. Yeah. That's a direct quality. But, the aim of fighting is to outscore, outpoint, knock out, win the fight. There's no direct 1RM that's going to 1RM test or 3RM test or counter movement jump test that's going to show you that they've actually fucking improved in the ring. You just hope. That's why I get the philosophy for combat sports strength and conditioning is a lot more, how can I keep this athlete in the gym doing a bunch of different, focusing on a bunch of different movement qualities that may help transfer to power, speed, endurance, rotational power, whatever it might be.
Yeah, absolutely, man. If you're fickling around for, like you're saying, if you're trying to shave a couple seconds off here, if you're trying to add 1.25 kilos on your dead and, you're a fighter or you're an athlete of any form, I'm sure you can find other areas where you can invest your time and energy. There's a point of no return ultimately.
Yeah.
But at the same time, it's the consistency. And that's something that I find that people, probably not maybe in the fighters, because, fighters periodically come on and off and on and off. But, relating back to football, what I find is guys aren't consistent enough, specifically with athletes. I think people in general aren't consistent enough, but we'll just talk athletes here. They'll train in the off season, they'll do well, come in season, and everything's out the window. They don't maintain their strength, and they're just kind of rebuilding, knocking down until they get to a point where they reach like 25, 26 years old.
Yeah.
And because they actually haven't built any strength in all these off seasons they've done, it's only been, they've gotten strong and it might last them for a month or two. By the time they've got to start competing with guys that have been doing it properly, when they match up with them from a physical standpoint, the injuries really start tying in because they just can't keep up with that level. And when you're in sports, you're going to push yourself to limits where I don't think you can actually get in the weights room. There's just a different level. Like, being reactive to something is you've got to make a decision in a split second. Whether that's ball gets deflected, you got to turn, or you got to block a quick punch. I don't think you can ever mimic that in the weights room.
No.
So like you said, it's hard to see, is my dad actually making me fucking knock this guy out? You're never going to be able to say yes or no to that. Yeah. It's impossible. It's
a small part of a big picture. It's a very small building block that isn't significant enough to confirm in isolation that it's the thing that's helping you out. But it should be, again, it is a building block in the end, should be in the program. On that note as well, how much better would that athlete who kept going on and off with their strength or kept moving in and out of their off-season training, it would have been better for that athlete to find an approach they could stick to year-round when really nothing leaves the program. There might just be a little bit more emphasis on one quality than the other, but everything's in there. If you could find, or give an athlete a way to train as many movement qualities as they can year-round, their base won't, their overall base won't come down too much if they decide, okay, I've got to take a bit of time off. They can come back and they've been developing all these qualities for years alongside sport practice without the arbitrary aim of transferring it directly to soccer, for example. It's just there for good quality training. Build the armor, become more resilient, be more neurally powerful. Their return from injury as well improves as well, which is awesome. But that same athlete would have been in the game longer for sure.
Yeah, no doubt. So, with your training, what are you looking to achieve over the next 6 months, man? We spoke about the past 6. What's in sight for you? For me, from now until the end of the year.
Good question. So, I mean, my intention from the beginning, when I started in November 2022, so we're almost at the 2-year mark now. My intention was to go pro within then. So I'm on track to do that.
Yep.
And we'll see how it goes. I've just got to string
go
together.
Pro within 2
years of Muay Thai.
So
we're starting. Within 2 years of starting. So we've, had a good amateur stint. I want to do 2, maybe 3 more, see what my coach thinks.
I'm sorry to cut you off. What does going pro actually mean? Because you could technically say, not technically, but can't you just technically go into a pro fight now? Or do you have to meet a criteria?
I mean, you could. In Muay Thai especially, you can. There are certain promotions that will allow you to, I think, personally step into the ring a lot earlier than you probably should.
Or you want to get to a certain level and then apply for the pro license or however it works.
Exactly right. And it'll come down to the responsibility of the athlete themselves and their understanding of really knowing how good they personally think they are. That's one part of it. And then also the coach meeting them in that same sort of mind frame and them agreeing and then talking to a promoter or something. And then everyone come into an agreement that they'd be suitable for a professional fight.
Okay.
Which, that's what most people do. But like you said, there are some people who can go pro earlier. They might have a couple amateur fights, go pro. Oftentimes doesn't work out too well for them.
Yeah.
Because they might come up against a guy who's had a lot more amateur fights, dealt with a lot more troubles, had a lot more wins. They come in and they get knocked out in their first professional fight. Mm-hmm. That can still happen to someone who's prepared. Fighting is a dangerous game.
Yeah.
But to track back on the goal, it's on going pro. Sorry. In Muay Thai specifically in Victoria or most of the time in Australia, amateur is where you're wearing open face headgear, slightly bigger gloves. I wear 12-ounce gloves in my competitions. There's elbow pads and there's small cloth shin guards. They all come off and then you wear 10-ounce gloves. So full Thai rules have been all my fights. So elbows, clinch, knees, they're all allowed. Knees to the face, all the above.
So Muay Thai is just another word for Thai boxing?
Exactly, yeah. That's what it means, in Thai. So Muay just means box, I'm pretty sure.
Okay.
Or maybe it just means, I don't even know. I think it just refers to a boxing athlete.
Yeah.
In Thai. But so Thai boxing, it's what they call the art of 8 limbs. You can use your elbows, knees, feet, hands. And that was the rule set. The full Thai rule set was what I've fought 5 times under. It's the same rule set, just 1 minute longer rounds and less protective gear. So
yours are what now?
3x2, yeah.
Okay.
Typically all amateur fights, most sports, unless it's MMA. I think MMA is the only one that still does they might do 3-minute rounds.
Yeah.
And they go to 5 at pro.
And what was your break?
My break?
In between reps.
1 minute break,
okay.
Yeah.
So we did a minute and a half,
yeah.
But it was 3x2s.
Yeah.
And a minute and a half was ages.
Yeah.
I was like, man,
You're fit enough for that to...
I'm fucking...
that's a full recovery for you,
But again, like I said, I didn't full max out. Perhaps I would have needed it. I was breathing, don't get me wrong, but I was in the minute and a half's like, all right, I'm kind of bored now.
Yeah.
Let's get on with
back
this.
in there, yeah.
So yeah, from that to you'll be going to 3 by.
3 by 3, yeah.
Okay.
So just 1 minute extra per round, which is...
But the break is...
Same time.
Okay, so still be a minute?
Yeah, still be a minute break.
Is that typical?
Yeah, I mean, there are like traditional Muay Thai fights in Thailand where if it's a 5-round fight, they'll do 2-minute break in between each round. But that's like a traditional Thai style. You don't see that too often anymore. Like there are some shows in Australia that might even do that, but yeah, you won't see that too often.
Have you found like a style now that you're, kind of mimicking or you're kind of accustomed to? Sort
of. I think I like to kick, I like to be evasive, but at the same time, I like going forward too. If a lot of people develop a style a lot longer over their career, like I can't say I've cemented that in.
Yeah.
But it definitely has refined itself like over time. I definitely like to keep my range, but I'm comfortable everywhere. Like if someone wants to box and I have to potentially box back, I'm happy to do that. If someone wants to clinch, I've got measures to counteract clinching.
Yeah.
Kick for kick is, my bread and butter. I like kicking. Shove a clip in here of me hitting a pad if you want to make a cool edit.
I've seen them, man. I've seen them, man. You smack the fuck out of them.
It's good. It's my favorite part of Muay Thai training. A nice roundhouse kick. You can't go wrong. It's the highest scoring technique in Muay Thai as well. So, like, you might even see something you might actually find useful, or not useful, entertaining to look into is the difference between K1 kickboxing and Muay Thai.
Yep.
And when Muay Thai athletes go to kickboxing at the highest level, you've got a very Dutch-style, heavy-handed guy who's a bit more squared in their stance, with a lot more volume with their hands at the occasional kick. Or they might mix up the kicks and knees occasionally against a Thai stylist who's a bit more narrow stance and likes to fling their kicks and be evasive. Like, seeing those styles go up against each other, it's pretty much a battle of who's refined their style more to beat the other.
Interesting.
So, yeah.
You say Dutch style?
Yeah, Dutch style. Yeah.
So K1, what is it? Dutch origin?
K1 is I could be wrong here, but I believe it started as a derivative of Kyokushin karate in Japan.
Okay.
And then there were Dutch people who went to Japan who were also karate stylists, and then they ended up blending boxing and Kyokushin karate together. And they have like a federation there. Some of the top level K1 athletes from Japan competed in something called Shin Karate, which is, stand and bang in front of each other, but with the gloves on. Typical traditional Kyokushin karate is you are in front of each other. You don't punch to the face, but you punch and smack your legs on each other's body and legs. So if you watch a fight, like they're just in front of each other, bashing each other, but nothing to the face, everything to the body. Bare shin, bare knuckle.
Jesus.
But then that's where it blended from. Muay Thai originated in Thailand, and like some parts of the world might think it came from like Cambodia. But that part of Southeast Asia had their own style of kickboxing, where the elbows and the clinch are involved. They had that, and then they went back to the Netherlands, and a typical Dutch style would look like a Japanese style kickboxer, but a lot more hands, a lot more high shell guard, get in your face, throw lots of hooks and shit.
Yeah, interesting.
Yeah.
I had no idea, man. I didn't even know the Dutch fought.
Yeah. I had massive kickboxing.
Check this for a sec. Yeah, we still lose.
Sweet.
Yeah, I had no idea they were still fighting, bro. Still fighting. I didn't even fucking.
It's not a ramble. You can cut this out of the thing if you want to.
I didn't even know they were the fighting nation.
Oh man, they're huge. The Dutch kickboxers, they've got to come like descend from Vikings or something.
Van Damme.
Yeah, exactly. You got Rico Verhoeven, who's like one of the biggest, one of the greatest heavyweight kickboxers of all time. He's fucking huge. He's like 6'7", fucking.
Yeah.
But like a lot of the Dutch people, there's a lot of Turks and Moroccans in Netherlands.
Yep.
That train out of the Netherlands, but their ethnicity is Turkish or Moroccan, and a lot of them too, all around the world. The high level kickboxers too.
So I see you're a big fan of plyos.
For sure.
Which I absolutely love, because that's something that I implement hardcore with my guys. Even just having some fun in the gym is something that I go about it. Almost to the point where sometimes I get carried away and I've copped some pretty bad calf injuries.
Yeah.
Just getting too excited. Talk to me about them, how you implement them, and why do you think they're so important?
Yeah, I mean, with implementation, especially with a newer athlete, the goal is to improve the overall athleticism. Players are a big part of the equation, but a graded approach is definitely still required. Like any other aspect of physical performance, you need a graded approach. Otherwise, take a bicep curl, you lift too much weight too early, too much volume, you'll probably end up getting a bicep tendinopathy or heavy pain signals. Same thing with plyos, you're putting a fast, whether it's an upper body plyo or lower body plyo, you're putting a fast contraction through a higher level of force, through a joint, through a tendon, through that musculoskeletal complex that exceeds the demands of your sport, right? You're isolating. That's something. The beauty of them is that you're in a controlled environment exceeding the demands of your sport, and you can somewhat measure it, right? You can maybe allocate a little bit of volume to a low tier and deep tier plyometric, something with a bit more force allocated to it and a bit more demand, like some bounding and hopping work, whether it's single leg, double leg. In terms of implementation as well, I like to, with combat sports athletes that I coach, 2 to 3 times a week, I have them leaving the ground in a less demanding way, whether that be pogo variations, whether that be laterally bounding, just straight vertical variations, whether that be with a bi stance or B stance sort of, or kick stance sort of starting position, or bilaterally. I like to keep those in a fair bit. They're good preparatory movements as well for a lot of sessions. They can get you neurally stimulated. And then maybe 1 or 2 times a week where we can fit it in much higher demanding bounding work, maybe coupling that with some sprinting drills, because sprinting in itself is a form of a plyometric. Lots of ground reaction force, highest velocity possible, puts the force on your hips, knees, ankles unimaginably higher than anything you'd experience in the ring, generally speaking. So, but I guess with the programming of it long term, it's not so regimented and rigid. If we find they can handle it and it's in the program year round, I have peace of mind as a coach knowing they're leaving the ground and we're following general frameworks. If they're leaving the ground 2-3 times a week, maybe doing 2 to 3 sets on a couple, like 2 to 3 different variations per week as well, I'm happy.
Yeah. I always sprinkle them at the start of my sessions. I'm sure you do the same.
Yeah.
But the thing I like about them the most is it's literally the closest form of what you're going to get in whatever field of sport that you're playing. All the weights and shit like that has its place, but at the end of the day, I think if you're an athlete that's not implementing them, you're really capping yourself. You're limiting yourself in the threshold that you can really push as an athlete.
100%.
Like the best athletes that I've dealt with typically are more responsive and can apply plyometrics in the best possible manner because it shows true athleticism.
Yeah.
You got your balance, you got your coordination, explosive type movements, decelerating movements. That's everything that you're going to have in the field. Whereas through any sort of weights, which is more like, I guess it's the body armor type of movements.
Yeah.
Those things are type to build the body armor and create enough strength so we can produce more force in those plyos or on the field.
Yeah.
But they're not going to translate if you sprinkle them in.
Yeah, you kind of, if your end goal is performance, the most performance possible, you need both in the program.
Absolutely.
Kind of one without the other, if you want the most results, typically. And what do we want our athletes in any sport to achieve? Better problem solving. If you can expose them to leaving the ground in different ways and reacting to different forces that they put upon themselves, whether it's with their own body weight or an external weight, a basic squat or a deadlift or a pressing movement or a pull-up, it all has its place, and it's more movement variability. If we can get them, it opens up a lot more doors than just lifting heavy weights, building conditioning on an air dyne. It's a big part of the picture that we've got to keep in the program. Moving your own weight fast and moving other weight fast. Maybe it's an Olympic lift derivative, or doing some sort of ballistic work with a med ball. Those are very important movements, but definitely plyos I like to place at the beginning of sessions if it's coupled with a full strength and conditioning session.
Yeah, I've got good. I've gotten very good response from not only doing plyos but doing reactive plyos too.
Yep.
Which fine tunes it even more close to the sport. Because if we're just doing like say bounds, it's controlled if you know how to bound.
Yeah.
But if you're doing a bound and as just before you land, you need to go laterally left or right, and you're told just before that, that creates that reactive component in which you can only really get in the game.
Yeah.
So, we do like say strength work, which is very controlled. Then you could argue plyos is as well if you don't apply a reactive component, but it's still a little bit more advanced. Implement some reactive type stuff. So I'll do like it'll be a vertical jump, and then as they're about to land, I'll be like left.
Yeah.
And they've got to land, and at that land, they've got to completely push off, laterally go left. They might have to land in a split stance, things like that, which is preventative of injuries because in a game of football, you jump up for a header.
Yeah.
How are you going to land?
Yeah.
And how are you going to land and then turn and then run that way if you need be?
Yeah.
So there's a lot you need to implement and think about. So that's something that you can also do with your guys is add that reactive component because that will really close the gap just a bit more.
Yeah.
And I do it with my warm-ups too because warm-ups can typically be very mundane.
Yeah,
Constantly just like, I'm just opening my chest and kicking out, opening my gate. But
it's massive for me and my athletes. Like buy-in is everything.
Yeah.
Buy-in is no matter what. If you don't have buy-in, they're not going to be as adherent long term. That's for sure. It's interesting to see how you blended a specific quality with a general quality there. I like that. I like that a lot. Where I do it more with like combat sports athletes might be on the conditioning side of things a bit more. Just because I'm looking for bang for buck, like I might have them doing an anaerobic alactic round on, no, not alactic round, so lactic capacity work, which is like, I like to call them death rounds on the Airdyne, where they're 30-second all-out periods with maximal rest, but half of that rest period might be a active rest where they're blending like touch sparring, maybe heavy bag work or shadow boxing in that first half of like say the 4-minute rest period. 2 minutes of that might be shadow boxing whilst they're under that fatigue. 2 minutes complete rest, then they're back on, and they might repeat that until there is a significant drop off in the total calories that they produce from that 30-second period. That's when we know, okay, we've done what we needed to do here.
Yeah.
There's plenty of work done there. All it takes is like 3 rounds of that, and it's really good. But in terms of like total, like complete structure, start to finish for your athletes, how would you go about structuring a typical session, like a general session? What's your framework typically?
Well, usually the guys will do 2 days a week
Yep.
In the gym in terms of just strength work, not including like a primer. And that will always incorporate pliers at the start.
Yeah. Keep going. Just pretend I'm there. Still going. Yeah, hectic.
So that will always incorporate pliers at the start. Now I break it up depending on what kind of athlete they are, what they need to improve on. I usually have like a lateral day, or I'll have a horizontal day, or I have a vertical day, and if they're pretty advanced, I'll do a variation of the two where it might be lateral to horizontal, might be horizontal to lateral, It might be more of a deceleration type sort of day, which incorporates, when I go from like lateral to horizontal, there's an element of deceleration because you jump in, so to your right, you've got to decelerate and then shoot out forward. So that's more advanced. But on a basic level, there'll be 2 days. One will be more lateral and one will be more vertical, say.
Yeah.
And the verticals will be anything between box jumps, might be single-legged box jumps, might be, I don't even know what half of these are even called. Like you seated down and then you slam your feet.
Yeah.
Other ones where you're just sitting down and you're not slamming your feet, you're just jumping. So working through different various movements of that nature. And then the lateral day or the horizontal day will be jumps to left and right,
Yep.
from split stance to single-legged to both-legged, jumping, landing, things like that. And then I move into some strength work.
Good,
And
yeah.
that might be the compound move. So it might be the squat.
Yeah.
It might be the dead. It might just be some rack pulls with an isometric a pull.
Yeah.
Where I've got the heels raised on both ends to really build that tendon strength.
Yeah.
I usually do them in season because a lot of guys are stuffed.
Yeah.
And I don't want to induce too much fatigue on them.
Yeah.
I mean, ultimately, the sport's a priority.
Yeah.
So I get a lot of benefit out of isometrics through that point of view.
They're sick. Isometrics are good.
And then I'll do some accessory work. So it might be some reverse lunges. Where it'll be more hypertrophy type rep ranges.
Yeah.
And that's kind of dictated to, again, if they may have an injury, they may have an inefficiency in one sort of leg than the other. I always like to do a unilateral movement so that way I can undo the muscle imbalances to the best of my ability.
Yeah.
And that will, again, be dictated. If he's got an injury here, this, that, whatever he may need improvement. Then I'll also typically do a glute ham or another groin, adductor, something like that, because that's a very common injury that soccer players have with the instep kicking, a lot of tackling.
Yeah.
So I really like to build the strength up with that. A lot of Copenhagen's as well, so another isometric.
Nice.
And then it's just upper body sort of stuff. Now, this isn't really as important as more like the lower body sort of stuff. So I kind of just frame it around what they enjoy doing.
Yeah.
The first half of the session is more or less like what I think they need to do. Although it's important to have a good upper body and be a generally strong athlete, whether they do an incline press or a flat bench or fucking a military, it's not going to be a world of a difference. So I like to put things that they enjoy doing, so they can actually enjoy the workout. Good. A lot of athletes sometimes find, even myself, man, I looked at strength and conditioning as it became like homework.
Yeah.
Because I enjoyed fighting or playing my sport that much in comparison to my strength work that I struggled to do it.
Yeah.
So I know that I go through that, and I'm sure it's a common theme for other athletes. I'm going to speak to them, they tell me.
Yeah.
So the more enjoyable I can make the session through plyometrics, there's obviously going to be some boring shit we need to do. Mm-hmm. But then if we can add some like supersets and get them a little pump or something like that, then I chuck them in at the end, and I'll always implement some core and rotational movements as well with the core. So basically just trying to formulate, and I think that has got to me the best results.
Good.
Like you said, the guys have the buy-in, they enjoy it. We tick what needs to get ticked, and the results are reflective of that, man.
Yeah.
I'm sure it's somewhat similar with...
Very similar. Yeah. Like again, the priority buy-in, covering as many physical qualities as you can that are important to that athlete, and having an agile system. Some days they might be beat up, and maybe a resilient site training session and some more isometrics and mobility-based stuff is a lot better for them on this given day. There's no point in them going through maximal strength or moderate strength work because it's just going to fry them, especially if it's on like maybe a higher intensity week or maybe there's an important game coming up. You just want to have them fresh for the game. But the session structure is very similar, like the typical framework, and again, it's malleable depending on the athlete's needs. Overall for the week, like I'll have 2 primary sessions, but there's other work they can do. I typically have an athlete doing between 1 to 3 extra sessions that are much shorter, much less demanding. So they can pretty much be in the gym doing something every day, but there's 2 bigger days, and on those bigger days, general warm-up, 10 minutes max. I like to use the Airdyne, 5 minutes on the Airdyne, nasal breathing. That helps them open up the rib cage and the hips. Then it'll help them work up a light sweat. Then I sort of blend the last 5 minutes into the start of the session. This might just be leaving the ground hopping. It might be like a basic pogo variation with the hands on the hips, so you're not really jumping up really hard.
So it's just leg based, more leg dominant.
More leg dominant, yeah. Then we might do like a upper body stiffness one where maybe it's like a banded jumping push up. We're landing and reacting with the ground, where we're yielding against the force. Then there might be some ballistic work, like a bilateral med ball scoop toss against a wall, or some sort of rotational movement with the med balls. Endless variations you can do with the med ball. It's a super versatile piece of equipment. Then we move into primary strength work. Typically, what I find my athletes have the most buy-in for bang for buck and time, because a lot of combat sports athletes tend to not have a lot of time on their hands. Most athletes don't, but using things like trisets, like a superset with 3 movements.
Yep.
So I like to pick for the primary work on day 1. It might be, for example, a primary squatting pattern. It could be a Zercher squat. Then the movement they go to from there might be a lateral flexion movement in the core. That might be a 45-degree bench or 45-degree side bend with a dumbbell. And then the third movement in that tricep might be a unilateral lower body movement. So it might be a ipsilateral dumbbell lunge, for example. 3 rounds of that, maybe 45 seconds to 2 minutes rest in between the rounds, depending on the athlete's needs and how hard they've pushed it. And then we go into our secondary strength work. Maybe we do a vertical pulling movement. You know, a jiu-jitsu athlete, Jake, loves the, who's one of my grappling strength and conditioning clients. He loves the towel pull-ups. We kill 2 birds with 1 stone, bit of grip, bit of vertical pulling strength, which is important for jiu-jitsu.
They're fucking hard, man. I've been
Very
doing them
hard.
with the battle ropes lately.
Yeah, fuck, they're difficult. Even getting on the ropes. The rope is, for most combat sports athletes, if you've got like 2 ropes hanging from your gym anywhere, doing pull-ups on those, even just like climbing up them, that can be really well implemented into a tricep as well. So going from that into maybe an anterior core movement, like a guy hammer raise. I love guy hammer raises. And then your third movement might be a pressing movement, for example. So we've covered some good ground there, or it might be a dip, like a Olympic ring dips or something, or regular dips. Then at the end of the session, we do some supersets on key resilience sites for combat sports athletes, which, depending on their needs, you know, neck, hips, knees, ankles, shoulders. I like to mold that based on the athlete's requirements. If they're pretty good, like they're not really niggly and they're generally good at managing their intensity and they don't present with too many niggles, like I just make them train their neck and arms. Like good buy-in, easy to do.
Yeah.
But maybe like one athlete of mine might have some hip issues they've got to work around. We might have them doing a superset between a loaded Thomas stretch and then like an adductor bridge. So we're working different muscles surrounding the hip joint. And then after all that's done, if there's some time, we'd finish up on the air dyne, doing, depending on what day it is, like if they're maybe 4 weeks out from camp, from a fight, they might have one day that's more aerobic power based or aerobic capacity based. They might go 2 minutes on for like at a 75% intensity, 1 minute off for like 4 rounds, and then the other day on their second main strength and conditioning session, they might do, like I mentioned earlier, a lactic capacity sort of protocol, which is the death round that I call it. So they cover both sides of the both 2 different energy systems there. We cover as much as we can, and then we just mold those sessions into what works for them over time. And like some weeks, if an athlete's too fried, like it might just be doing some like overcoming isometrics for a full session. That's enough neural stimulus.
Yeah.
Like at a certain joint angle, like they might be doing 45-degree pull-up holds, overcoming barbell deadlifts where they're just pulling up against an immovable object for a deadlift hold. It might be like a single leg calf raise hold with a bar on their back.
Yeah, I do a lot of them.
Yeah, do those, and then maybe a yielding variation, so doing the same sort of things as they're slowly lowering in an eccentric as well. Those things can be very therapeutic.
Have you fucked around with any contrast training?
Contrast training, I don't do much contrast training with my athletes, no, because I find it hard to fit in into the program.
It's a lot. Like
it's a lot.
You're just saying a lot of work.
It's a lot of stuff.
Takes a lot to be good.
100%. And contrast training, you can fit it into like a tricep, but I feel like I could put more, as a coach, I could put more into movements that have more bang for buck and more return, I guess. Like the contrast training is good. It's not like it has its place, that's for sure. But it's like, I don't really want my athlete fucking around with like a maximal or almost maximal compound movement and then jumping a shit ton, like in both primary sessions. We might experiment with it here and there, but it's not my preferred way to coach for strength and conditioning.
I mean, I don't do it with my guys.
Yeah.
I've just done it on myself.
Yeah.
Just for a bit of fun and just experiment with it.
Yeah.
It's actually pretty cool, man.
Yeah.
Even if it doesn't have to be a full range of motion movement. Like,
yeah.
Like an isometric to something more explosive.
Yeah.
You really noticeably feel it, man.
I can see where the buy-in can be from that because it's such a neurally stimulating thing doing an isometric, and then maybe you're doing like a squat isometric against an immovable object, and then going into like broad jumps or something could be. But that's where like I could see where the athlete's at, what their experience is like. If they've got experience doing that and they like that, I might blend it into their program. But like where I'd individualize it more would be grappler versus striker maybe.
Yeah.
If I know a grappler is going to have a lot more force put through their leg in a deep squat position more often than not, they might do some pliers where they're lower to the ground, forcing a shin drop, for example. Mm-hmm. Like they might do a lot more like split squat jumps into like a yielding position, and they might have like their heel elevated off the ground. So we're building resilience in those vulnerable positions, teaching their body to relax in those deep, more vulnerable positions. Versus someone who's more upright all the time, I'll probably have them just jumping more with a rigid leg, as well as like blending in their upper body rigidity movements. Like for a striker, for example, I might have them blending their upper body rigidity movements into their primary trisets.
Yep.
Like you might go from a barbell RDL or a trap bar kickstand RDL or deadlift, like as primary strength work. Then like the second movement in that tricep might be a deficit push-up into a single arm hold, where they're really putting force through that arm and working on co-contractions there and rigidity there. And the last part of that tricep might just be like another pushing movement. Blending that in, looks like figuring out what they have the time for and what they need. That's where the differences will come in. But that's the sort of framework, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, again, when you've got a limited time, it's what can you get in there. So it's the bang for the bucks. I mean, if we've got all the time in the world, we can unpeak every single type of training modality. Yeah. But I think ultimately it's the bang for the buck stuff that gets the most success. I remember my training prior to the fight camp, I was actually only doing I was just sprinkling in training every single day.
Yeah.
And I wasn't doing my standard hour to hour and a half sessions in terms of the weight sort of stuff. For two reasons. It started off firstly because I couldn't even be fucked.
Yeah.
I just, for the life of me, could not think I'm going to go to the gym and hit weights for an hour to an hour and a half to get everything that I needed to get done.
Yeah.
I thought, you know what? I've got more time. I've got this here. I'll do my training, so I'm boxing or my running, and then at night, I'll hit 3-4 sets of deads and maybe an upper body. I'll do like a total of 7 sets.
Yeah.
And then that's it. And then the next day, I'll do the exact same thing. And the next day, I'll do the exact same thing. And I found I wasn't getting fatigued as much. I was still getting the same amount of volume. I was just drip feeding it. And obviously I've got more time and I'm blessed to have the ability to do it right here. But for me, it's worked out paramount, man.
Yeah. I have some athletes that have the exact approach. I show them the framework that I'd like to start with. But again, every coach should have a framework that, a science-based sort of framework they have that works for most people, but not everyone's the same.
Yeah.
If you've got a dude who's a soccer player or a fighter who also works full-time hours and then needs to get in this extra training on top of their already training, but they have a home gym like that's perfect. All right, you come in from a long day. I want you training every day or most days except for Sundays, but they're 20 to 30 minute sessions. Yeah. This day you're working deads, a pushing, a B stance deadlift on a trap bar, primary squatting movement. You're jumping a bit, you're throwing the ball, you're done in 30 minutes, go to bed. I'd rather you do that.
Yeah.
And then maybe the next day you're chasing a pump. You're just, working on bis, neck, triceps, your knee flexors, those sort of things. Rest. next day, maybe a bit of a heavier session. If you can like drip feed, I love that approach.
Yeah, literally, mate. I've literally had a steak cooking out there.
Yeah.
And I'm like, all right, it's on for 4 minutes on one side.
Yeah.
I'll come in, I'll pump a set out.
Yeah.
I'll go back out, I'd flip it, I'd rest, pump another set out, take the steak off, let the steak rest for 10 minutes, another set. And like, by the time I've cooked the steak, I've done half a workout, and you know what I'm saying? Yeah. Preparation of the steak, then a rest before coming out of the fridge, done my warm up.
What's your quote? Your excuse is our reason.
Yeah,
there it is.
Your excuse is our reason.
That's your quote. The first time I heard you say that, it's stuck with me, and that's all I think about when you say that.
Yeah.
People say, I've got no time. Realistically, there's a gap in your calendar, and there's a way you can do two things at once. Like what mundane thing are you doing that gives you time to do something else at the same time? That's such a specific example to you, and realistically, not everyone's going to do that. But if you wanted to, you would, right?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, look, as I said, I'm blessed to have this year. But at the end of the day, you can find a reason to do something if you truly want to. It's as simple as that.
100%.
It's as simple as that, man.
One thing I think we'll edit this out as well. We touched on being personable as a coach on Friday before your fight. We didn't talk about that at all today. Like
having like a relationship with the guys.
Yeah. We could touch on that if you want.
Yeah, let's go into it.
Yeah. How will we start the clip? I mean,
So, I mean, the one thing that I've found with coaching is it's more than just knowledge. Mm-hmm. I think knowledge is standard, like you need it obviously, but fuck man, like for me, coaching's an art.
Yeah.
Like it's actually a skill in getting people to listen to what the fuck you have to say. It's super important to, I guess, practice what you preach and walk the walk. Obviously you're doing that, like you're fighting at a higher level and you're looking to go even higher, which is, something that people that you take on would admire to some degree. But you've obviously got coaches. Like, what have you learnt off them that you apply with your guys now, that people that you take care of?
Yeah, for all the same reason that they're a good coach, they're also great people too, and that's something I pride myself on as well. I don't want to be known as just the book smart guy that knows everything. My clients may see that, but they're also going to see the personable side of me. That if an athlete's not performing on a given day, I'm not going to grill them for it. They could be going through some shit. They're human beings at the end of the day as well. And from a coach's standpoint, like we've got to remember everything is going to fall down to how people remember you, right? For how you made them feel. You could make them feel good in the gym and make them better athletes, but what's it all worth if all they really remember you for is how much of a cunt you were? Like, yeah, there's a time and place for that authoritarian approach. It works, but blend it and meet it with being personable, right? If people, aren't sticking around for your services, potentially, it's because you're always taking the hard ass approach. You know what I mean? You might get 10 people that finish the same university degree. Six of those people. Let's take 6 of those people. Some of them might have finished with the same. They would have finished with a similar grade. One of them has a shit career, but another one of them ends up having a better career with a lower grade, purely because they're more personable. They listened more in the psychology-based subjects. They listened more in they applied themselves more in placement. They weren't just in the books. Similar with coaching as well. If you can, figure out a way to develop a friendship with your clients too, it's super important.
All right, well, fuck, man. I think that's all we really got time for today. We're definitely going to do this again.
Oh yeah.
Definitely when you're a professional Muay Thai fighter, so we can talk about the journey and recap from when you started to where you're at, and explore the new set of goals, and I guess my ones too. And if anyone wants to reach Kyrin, where can they find you, bro?
Yeah, you can reach me on one area, Instagram, CoachKyz, KYZ. And if you want to keep reinventing yourself every 6 months and want someone to assist you in your corner, hit me up in the DMs, check out what I offer. I'm sure it'll be of value to you if you're listening this far into the podcast.
Yeah, guys, I don't sling shit that I don't think it's worth it, and he wouldn't be sitting here if I didn't think it was worth it either. So, I mean, I've had a great chat with him. I've got a couple of boys that are working with him right now, and they can't shut up about it. So if you want to run your mouth to your mates about how good you are, then message him. I'll drop all the links in the description so you can check him out. Until next time, we'll have a frappe. We're pros.
My man, let's go.